All right, welcome back to the Logan Show. If you're watching the show on YouTube, the video version, you can also listen across all podcast platforms in audio format. With me today is the legendary rock and roll drummer Chris Slade, of course, from acdc, Manfred Mann's Earth Band, The Firm with Jimmy Page and Paul Rodgers, a million other bands. Chris, what's going on, man?
Not a lot, except I'm just brought out an album, which I'm quite proud of, actually. And I'm proud of my band, the Chris Slade Timeline, and just doing an interview with yourself, people like yourself, thank you very much, to talk about it.
Yeah, so I want to jump right into that. It's a brand new double album from the Chris Slade Timeline called Timescape. It's been out for, I don't know, about 3 weeks now or so. And it's like I said, it's a double album, half new music and half covers of some of the classic songs that you've been a part of. And I guess the entire essence of the album, as both the band name and the album title would imply, is that it's really a culmination of your entire career, which is now above 60 years, which is just incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is 60 years. I turned professional when I was 16 with Tom Jones. I stayed with Tom for 7 years through the 60s. And it's been 60 years since then, at least. So, yeah, I'm feeling a bit older.
Well, I want to get into Tom Jones and everything else, but while we're talking the new record, as far as your solo band, the Chris Slade Timeline, you've been playing with these guys for now, I don't know, 10, 12 years or something like that, I think.
Yep, 12 years. Yeah. I wanted a band that would be able to play my whole career. And want to do that, you know. Some people go, "Oh, I just play heavy stuff, man. I'm not going to play that," you know. So, but I knew these guys would be capable and would want to switch between acdc and say Uriah Heep or Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and be capable of it, because I knew they would be capable, because I used to go and see them when they played pubs and clubs in UK, and they were doing covers by Genesis and Kansas and people like that, and they were doing them perfectly with vocals and everything. So I knew they'd be more than capable of doing the stuff I have worked on and would want to do it. So we've been together 12 years, and the two guys in that, the guitarist James Cornford and the keyboard player Michael Clark, have been playing together since they were 11, and they're 35 now. So they're a pretty tight unit. And we've got two singers. One does the AC/DC and rockier stuff, and Steve does the Uriah Heep, which is pretty rocky, and David Gilmour, Jimmy Page material, all that sort of stuff.
As far as including the second part of the record, which is the covers of some of the songs you've played on, was that part of the initial idea for the record when you started writing this, which I think was 2.5 years ago or so? Was the idea always to include some covers, or did that idea come a little bit later on into writing the originals for the record?
No, it just sort of grew, really. And the record company wanted some AC/DC on it, which we recorded anyway, because we've been recording for 10 years, but it's always been covers, either AC/DC or Asia or Earth Band. So we had a lot in the can, and we still got a lot more in the can. And these are the ones that were mixed and sounded okay. We did them live, but we did them through a recording desk, so that they could be mixed a bit better than usual with live stuff. A bit like Frampton Comes Alive, actually.
Oh, I gotcha. So you said you have more in the can. Does that mean there'll be another record at some point?
Oh, I'm sure there will be. Even if I'm not alive, there will be.
Well, obviously, you have such an incredible catalog of songs that you've been a part of. It's absolutely legendary songs that are still radio staples today. So how do you decide, okay, these are the ones that I want to include? I mean, obviously, I think some are a given, such as Thunderstruck and Blinded by the Light, and some others.
Yeah.
But, for the rest, I mean, how do you decide, God only knows how many songs you've played on that are, big hits. I mean, how do you make that decision?
It's just like I said, they were mixed. Not everything's mixed. It's recorded, but not everything is mixed and finished. And these were mixed. So it was a choice from, we had a few more that are mixed, but I thought these were the best ones. And as I say, the record company wanted acdc, which of course I was well up for. We do a 2-hour show on stage, at least 2 hours. And an hour of that, not in one lump, is acdc. And the other half is Earth Band, Uriah Heep, David Gilmour, Jimmy Page, Paul Rogers, The Firm, and the other material apart from AC/DC. So, and the band can play it capably, more than capably, absolutely brilliantly, actually. James Cornford, the guitarist, does wonderfully. Because I can see the audience's faces when he starts playing, and it's like, what is this? He can't be David Gilmour and Jimmy Page. He's not trying to be. He's being James, and he's playing the way he plays, which is fantastic. And so the combination of him and Michael Clark, and we've got Stevie G on bass, who also sings the Earth Band material and the Uriah Heep stuff. And as I say, Bun Davis is the AC/DC rockier type singer. It's tremendous. We've been together 12 years, and actually we hate each other. But don't tell the guys I said that. But we have a great time, and we when we go to a gig, we were in Italy like last weekend. Next weekend we go to south of France. 3 months ago we were in Poland, and Czechoslovakia. Czech Republic. And Germany we play a lot. So we get around. And I'm pleased to do that. I love being on the road, and we go everywhere by van with the equipment, really retro, and I love it because that's what I've known all my life. Although with AC/DC, it was private planes, and with the Firm, it was private planes. So I'm used to all modes of travel. I work pretty cheap. And my phone number is.
Are there any plans for any U.S. dates?
The problem with the U.S. is that we would love to, is visas, work visas. I'm okay because I have a green card. But the guys need work visas. And there's been horror stories and invitation, of course, to go there. Heard horror stories about the visas showing up 2 months after the tour is supposed to end, which is not a good situation. Otherwise, we would love to try for the States. We can get into Canada, we can get into Mexico, we can get into South America. It's very, very difficult to get an offer from America and carry it through, from the USA and carry it through.
Those visas are seriously a pain in the ass for so many bands, and it does prevent a lot of bands such as yourself from being able to come over here very often or even at all. And it is a bummer. You know, plenty of great bands based overseas that and it's just it doesn't make any logistical sense to come here. And even then, you know, once you get approved for the visas, I mean, it costs a lot of money just to get here, and then you got to sort out the gear because obviously you can't. I mean, you could, it'd be crazy expensive, but, you know, nobody wants to fly over here with gear. You got to rent gear and get transportation and the whole bit. So it turns into, it just turns into a nightmare if you're not, you know, making a ton of money over here.
Yeah. Well, I do have a drum kit stored. It's the kit I used with acdc on the Grammys. So I do have a kit in storage. And to rent an amp is not, well, in fact, I know James would bring his own because he uses Kemper amps. So, you know, he would, well, in fact, we'd just buy some equipment over there.
Sure.
And keep it in storage. I haven't even thought about the logistics of it, but that's what we do. We'd buy the equipment. The drum kit would be a major cost of shipping. There's no need for me to do that because there's one in storage.
Yeah,
so, and I have, my son lives in Canada and he has a few kits too. So it's always handy having children all over the place.
Yeah, no kidding. One last thing on the new album before we move on to some other stuff. Two of the covers are songs that you didn't play on, which are Hell's Bells and High Voltage. What made you decide to include those on the record?
They're just good songs.
They are.
They're great songs.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I? You know, I have played them on stage, but not on record. And on the original side, I put two songs that were Earth Band songs. The reason I put them there is because they were hits. Minor hits, but they were hits. One is Joybringer and the other one is Questions. And they both did really well in Europe and Scandinavia. But I wrote them with Manfred and Mick Rogers, actually, who was the guitarist in Earth Band and still is the guitarist in Earth Band. And I wrote the lyrics. I didn't say that. So to me, that's an original song, you know, if I write with somebody. But Manfred didn't write the melody for Questions. It came from a classical. They both came from classical sources. It was done by Schubert, I believe. So it's called Schubert's Third Impromptu, if you like. And so I put on the album as Schubert's Third Racket.
Well, the record's great, and I guess we should also point out that there is a song on the album that you do vocals on as well.
Yeah, first time I've ever done lead vocals. I've always sung vocal backing, and I've always been able to sing in tune, which is a trick in itself. Okay. But I don't play a chordal instrument of any kind. I just play drums. So I went to Mike, the keyboard player, and said, you know, la, 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 make some musical sense out of that, Mike. And he did. I know my way around. I know what a major and a minor is. I know, you know, how songs are put together and what you need, you know. And I've been doing it. I've been writing lyrics since the 1970s. And I've always kept writing poetry and putting ideas down. But this was like, I've written some melodies in the past as well. But this was something else. About 2.5 years ago, melodies started coming to me. And the result is this album. So it was like, it wasn't just melodies for us for the song. It was bass lines, it was string lines, it was guitar arpeggios, piano arpeggios, all that sort of thing. And they just came to me. And so I stuck them all together like a jigsaw. And it's turned into what you hear. And I'm quite proud of it. And I think it stands up on its own.
No, it really is a great record. I want to jump back to your early days, but first, let me apologize. I'm a little under the weather, and I realize that I don't know if you can see on camera, but I realize I'm sitting here sweating profusely, and I keep having to mute the mic to cough, so my apologies.
It's okay. I'll just do the interview like this from now on.
Exactly. You better put a mask on. I don't want to spread anything to you. Rocking a fever here, but the show must go on, right? It's rock and roll.
Yeah, man. That's true.
Did you ever play any shows? Did you ever have to play any shows where you were like really sick?
Say again.
Did you ever have to play any shows where you were like really, really sick?
Yes, I'm just going to say. It was on the road in America in the 70s, and I got sick because I was a vegetarian back then. And I existed on grilled cheese sandwiches because you couldn't get any vegetables in America at that time. You just couldn't in restaurants. It was all burgers and whatever, So I got really sick, and the guys had to carry me on stage.
No,
in a chairlift. Two guys either side of me, the crew, picked me up, plonked me in my drum kit, and I started to play. And I walked off on my own, but I couldn't walk on. But because of the adrenaline of the show, that's what you got to do, man. Right now, go out and do a rock show. You'll feel a lot better.
But then once you get off stage, you probably, once the adrenaline dies down, you probably feel like shit then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your body's all worn out from playing. So you probably feel worse after the fact than you did beforehand, I would imagine.
It was, it worked, whatever it was, it worked. Because I walked away and I really could not walk before I went on stage.
Wow. And that was that with Earth Band?
That was with Earth Band, 1970s. I can't remember where. I remember top of the bill was Uriah Heep, strangely enough, because we knew those guys anyway. We were on the same record label, and we knew them personally and to speak to, and so I didn't want to mess the show up by not showing. So that's when the crew picked me up and carted me off.
That's an incredible story. So that would have been what, like 5-6 years or whatever before you, or within 10 years, I guess, depending on when it was, of you joining Uriah Heep, which was what, around 80 or something, I think.
Yeah, that wasn't even on the cards then.
Yeah.
But, Heep knew me, from, for years we've known each other, before I joined them. And they'd lost their drummer, so, it was like, oh, well, Lee's not there anymore. So they asked me, and I auditioned. I did a small audition for them, and they thought, well, this will work, so it was good. And it was good for me. I knew Mick Box anyway. He's a really funny guy. Great guitarist, really funny guy. So we got on well. And the lead singer that when I was with them was John Sloman, who is a fellow Welshman. I didn't know him before Heap, but we're still friends today. We were talking on email today. So, for me, it was great. And he's a great songwriter.
And you did, was it one album you did with them?
Yeah, Conquest.
So how long were you in Uriah Heep total then? Just a few years, right?
About 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Well, I want to jump back to the Tom Jones stuff real quickly, because what I find so fascinating is that growing up, your dad would work in a factory by day, and then at night he was a singer and tap dancer, and would go and do these shows at night, and come home and tell you that this kid Tom would sit in at all these shows with them and sing all the new songs of the day. It turned out to be a very young Tom Jones, so I guess at the time would have just been a teenager, which is just the connection there is just insane to me. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, we were in the same village, in South Wales, Treforest, Pontypridd, South Wales, and a couple of streets from me, but 10 years difference. Phil Campbell of Motorhead was born.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
And 2 streets from Phil Campbell Street, Tom Jones was born. And another 10 maybe with him. It's with Phil. It's probably 20 years difference between him and Tom. But so that little village, has brought some talent into the world.
No kidding.
Excuse myself, of course, because I'm just a drummer.
Well, and in a way, I guess everything really sort of, goes back to your dad and your brother, who not only went to school with Tom, but your brother's also the one that taught you to play drums, right? Because he was in the street marching band or whatever, and would make you clean his drums, and while you were cleaning, he would teach you some drum licks, and that's how you really started playing drums.
Yeah, you've done your research, man. Yes, absolutely true. So if some people don't like my drumming, so you can't blame me, blame my brother.
Well, what's funny though is that with all of those various connections to Tom with your dad and your brother, including living nearby, you didn't actually meet him until later on, when you were working at a shoe shop when you were like 16 years old.
Yep, that's absolutely right. We didn't meet each other, and Tommy, as my father knew him, because his name was Tommy Woodward, see? So he was Tommy. He must have been a mid-teenager, I think, when he did that with my dad's concert party, as it was called. And my father always used to come and tell me about this great singer guy. And I said, well, he can't be that great, otherwise he'd be on telly. So we used to have arguments about that. Of course, my father was right, because he became Tom Jones, who's probably one of the greatest singers ever born, because his voice was natural. He sang like that when he was 17, and he's never had a singing lesson in his life. And, it's incredible. The way that Tom can sing. And, when you've got singers like Tom Jones and Paul Rodgers and David Gilmour, you wouldn't even think of being a singer yourself, not having a voice like Tom Jones, for instance, or Gilmour.
Yeah.
It sounds like it doesn't, you wouldn't think of David Gilmour as being a great singer, but he is. Because everybody thinks they can sing like Gilmour. And it's a difficult thing. It sounds easy. It's like acdc. They make it sound so easy. Oh, it's acdc. We'll just do these 3 chords. And no, it's not like that. To do acdc properly. Well, put it this way. I haven't heard many bands do acdc properly. They're more about wearing the shorts and doing the duck walk than actually playing the songs properly. Not all of them, just some of them. But to them, it's like the name acdc and the shorts. And And that's not what it's about, guys.
Well,
you could have the music as well.
I was just talking to my fiance the other day, and we were talking about ACDC, and I guess I
hope you've talked to her since.
I haven't, so hopefully I got to fix that soon. But we were talking, and I'm like, obviously everybody at some point in their life tries to sing, whether it's just in the shower or with the radio or whatever. But I always wondered how Brian Johnson discovered that he could sing like that, because to me, it sounds natural for him, but it also sounds like such an unnatural way to sing that I feel like I don't know. I don't know how you would stumble upon having a voice like that. It's really remarkable.
It's almost unique, actually, and it takes a hell of a lot, because singing takes a lot, as you might know. Takes a hell of a lot. The two hardest things for stamina and for breath is singing and drumming. And when you do both together, like say Phil Collins, I know he doesn't say he has another drummer when he sings, but that's a hard gig, man, because you got to grab your breath when you can. It's not like just standing there and singing. It's with Brian, it is almost unique. But people people innovate on things, and he did that with his singing voice. And I've no idea where it came from, and probably neither does he.
Yeah,
but it's somewhere between a falsetto and what they call a head voice, because the singers have all these terms for different voices that they use. It's when he came out, it was unique, and probably that's why ACDC took him on. Because they must have tried other, or had an idea of other singers. And Brian must have stood out, above everybody else for being a unique voice. Well, that's my take on it.
I would imagine. I mean, obviously, I wasn't there, and I guess you weren't there either. But I would imagine, when they were auditioning guys after Bon died, everybody was probably trying to come in and sound like Bon Scott, and that just wasn't going to happen. And so, it was probably refreshing almost to hear a guy like Brian, who really sounded like nobody else, especially at that time. And what would that would have been, 1980 or something like that. So I think it all just worked out a perfect storm almost in a way.
Yes, I think you're right there. What you need in music is something to hang your hat on, a something, so that the people go, oh, what's that? How is he doing that? What is that? With guitar or voice or anything. So with Brian's voice, I think at the beginning, they found that, and they realized that was the case. So, more power to his elbow, I say, and his voice.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, jumping back to the Tom Jones stuff real quick, I wanted to ask, because when you end up joining the band when you were 16, almost 10 years younger than the rest of the band, you guys were pretty big around South Wales, and I think you said at one point that you were making like twice as much money as your dad was working at a factory. But then you guys go to London, and you can't even afford to eat. I mean, there was just no money. Nope. So was that a little bit of a reality check at the time? So in other words, were you aware that there wasn't much of a following at the time outside of South Wales? Or was it one of those things where it's like, man, we're so big at home that we're probably going to do well everywhere?
No, it wasn't anything like that. Wales in those days was completely cut off from the rest of Britain. There were no freeways in those days anywhere, not even in LA. Can you imagine that? LA without freeways?
No kidding. Wow.
No freeways anywhere in the world.
That's insane to think about.
So to get to, and no cell phones, no internet, and that's what we had to deal with. We knew no better because the stuff hadn't been invented yet. We drove around Britain when we started with Tom. First of all, around Wales. You can get around Wales because it was one valley, and it's still there. And we did the whole valley at some time or other, which is quite big, but we knew there was more to come, or there's a bigger world out there. But it took all day, 10 or 12 hours, to drive in a car from where we were in South Wales to London. So 10 or 12 hours just to get there. And my father used to drive us, first of all. And he used to borrow a car to do that. And he was a chauffeur before he was working in a factory. So, we all moved to London to find the big time, if you like. We had a manager at that point called Gordon Mills, who was a songwriter, fairly successful songwriter. He'd written a few hits. And so he said, "You got to come to London." So we did. And we found, as you say, reality check. No work, guys, no work. And then in some way, we got a show supporting the Rolling Stones. Excuse me. And that was in London, in Oxford Street, which is the main thoroughfare in London, shopping thoroughfare. And there was a small club, tiny club, held 200 people. And it was the Rolling Stones when they first brought out their first record, a Chuck Berry song called Come On. And I bought it. And everybody thought the Stones were fantastic. I liked the Stones and the Beatles. I was a member of the Beatles fan club. But the Stones hadn't started writing together yet. So it was the Rolling Stones, and it was Tom Jones and the Squires, as we were called then. And it was unbelievably hot. I remember it well. And there must have been 500 people in a 200 stander club. All young people like me. So Tom and the rest of the guys were all a bit older. So we were doing rock and roll because that's what we did. We were a rock and roll band. In other words, Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard. So we were a bit of an anathema because, the Stones are doing, they were probably doing songs that were just as old. They were old blues standards, That's what their set comprised of. And almost every London band were playing the same set. So, the Stones had to do something to get out of that rut, so they started writing themselves. Wow. So, it was a strange pairing, but we didn't ask any questions. And it was my first professional gig, but I didn't get paid. So does that count as a professional gig? I don't know.
Well, for one thing, I just actually just saw the Rolling Stones a couple of months ago for the first time. And my God, what an incredible show. And, obviously, I'm a younger guy, wasn't around, back then, but just an absolutely incredible performance. And to see guys, at that age, putting so much energy into it and packing out stadiums. I mean, it was almost a surreal moment, even though I wasn't there when they started. I mean, it was just like, oh my God. I remember looking at my fiance and I'm like, I cannot believe, I haven't looked at her since, by the way, but I looked at her and I was like, I can't believe that we're here and we're seeing this, this is just, it was incredible. But, anyways, I highly recommend anyone that hasn't seen them to go see them if they tour again after this tour that they just finished. But anyways, you say you guys didn't get paid, but shortly afterwards, you guys did get a record deal with Decca, which was the label that had the Stones at the time. So I would imagine that some of the label people were they must have been at that show, and that's kind of how that whole thing got started.
I don't know. Maybe it was. Maybe you're right. Whatever happened with Tom was down to Gordon Mills because he wrote "It's Not Unusual" for Tom. There's a whole story there because Tom wanted the song, but we were doing a demo. We did it as a demo for Sandy Shaw, who's a big female singer in Britain at the time. But she turned it down. She said, "This song is not mine. It belongs to the guy who's singing it," which was Tom. And we went to the pub after recording it. And Tom said to Gordon Mills, if I can't have that song, I'm going back to Wales, like tomorrow. And Gordon said, well, Sandy Shaw's got it, and she turned it down. So then Tom got it. And it turned into It's Not Unusual. So, it's funny how things work out sometimes. Because we all knew it was a hit record. And we only took about 10 minutes putting it together in the demo studio. On a 2-track tape machine.
Well, and when a lot of times when you hear the backstory of whatever hit song, most of the time it is one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, this song came together in 10, 20, 30 minutes or whatever. And a lot of time, when things like that come together so fast, a lot of times that is what turns out to be a big hit, because it's like almost like a natural thing, I would imagine, where it just kind of the song just comes together on its own, really.
Yep. So yes, that's exactly what it was like, and it swung like hell. And the record company then spent a lot of money trying to find the right feel for it, so it swung like the demo. And in the end, ended up with the brass figure, dan da dan. Dun, 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 dun. So we didn't have brass when we did the demo. We just played it with a piano, a guitar, a bass, and drums. And we knew immediately that it was a #1 record. It wasn't just going to be a hit record. It was going to be a #1 record. We all knew. It was obvious when we did it. You can ask Tom, you can ask anybody, and he will say the same thing. Because huge argument with the manager afterwards about keeping that song for him.
So you end up leaving Tom's band around 1969 or 70, and what was it that led you to that point? Because I got to imagine it's a very tough decision to make, to leave the band that you had found so much success with, and still at a very young age. Even as you left the band, I guess you were probably in your early 20s still when you ended up leaving.
Yeah, I must have been about 22, something like that. I left because I've been with Tom for 7 years, through thick and thin, and he was paying other guys 3 times what I was getting.
Oof.
So I left immediately. As soon as I got off the plane, that was it. Sorry, I'm gone.
Wow.
And that's the truth. And it wasn't him particularly, but it was Gordon Mills. He loves a deal, did Gordon. And, I was a young guy. I knew no different. But he was playing top people. I thought they were getting paid the same as me. No, 3 times as much. I took, I didn't like that at all.
Well, yeah,
So
no
I just
kidding.
left. And then Gordon called me back a few months later and went, well, you better pack your bags then. I went, why? He said, well, Tom's going back on the road. I said, I've just signed a contract, Gordon, with Manfred Mann. He went, oh, Manfred Mann. He said, oh, there was no hello, by the way. It was, you better pack your bags. Um, like assuming that I'm going to, and I'd already told him I'd finished, you know. And so silence for a little bit, then, oh, well, your loss, click.
Wow. Did you ever
He was that sort of guy.
did you try to get a raise before you left, or were you just like, nope, you know what, this is not fair to me, given I've been here for so long?
Yeah, I tried for years before, about 3 years before, to get a raise every time. And I got $20 here, $50 there.
Oh man.
You know, and you know, because he still saw me as a 16-year-old kid, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas, in fact, when I left, Tom got 2 drummers. So, you know,
What do you
I
mean?
must have had something going.
But yeah, no, what do you mean exactly by he got 2 drummers?
He got 2 drummers to play on stage.
Like at the same time? No kidding. Wow, I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, what I was going to do, they stopped me joining Elvis Presley as a drummer. And that's the truth. Elvis offered me a gig, and Tom didn't like it at all. And I should have just walked and said, screw you, I'm off. But I didn't, because I've been with Tom for so long. And I think Gordon Mills must have gone to Colonel Tom Parker and said, you can't steal our drummer. And so it sort of fiddles out. It was going to be me, in the end, it was going to be me and Ronnie Tutt on stage, because using 2 drummers in those days was getting quite fashionable. A lot of, especially cabaret artists, had 2 drummers. So it was going to be, I don't think Ronnie Tutt knew anything at all about this. I was talking to Joe Esposito, Elvis's right-hand man, and Colonel Tom Parker's right-hand man. And I was on the road with Tom, and it kept getting extended, and I kept missing rehearsals. And in the end, I said, look, Joe, this ain't going to work, because I'm not going to make... and he said, oh, we'll get 2 drummers. We'll get another drummer in, and you and he can do it. Well, who they got in was Ronnie Tutt, and he was the drummer ever since, you know, and did a great job with Elvis. And I say he probably knew nothing at all about me.
Wow. That's just an incredible, incredible story. I mean, my God, I had no idea that Elvis offered you a gig. I mean, wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. About 79, that was. And it was going to be just a month in Vegas, and Tom didn't want me to do it at all. So, you know, that month turned into years and years of touring. When I met Elvis, he wasn't doing drugs. He didn't even drink in those days. I did, but he didn't. And he threw a party for us and Tom. It was him and the Memphis Mafia. And Tom and the Squires. And that's where that picture with Elvis on one side and Tom on the other comes from. And I call that photograph, I call it, Who's That with Slade?
That's just, my God, what an absolutely incredible story, though. My God, how was Elvis at the time, though? I mean, obviously, again, I wasn't around at that time, but was he still? I mean, he probably wasn't still as popular at the time as he once was then, right? Elvis.
He was down a little bit, as you say, and so was Frank Sinatra, going down a bit. Don't forget, it was 60s. Yeah. Sinatra was still big. But Tom, this is the honest truth. In those days, Tom was bigger than Elvis Presley and Frank Sinatra put together.
Wow.
And that's the absolute truth. I'm not bullshitting, in any way. This was absolutely true. And, but still, he was Elvis Presley, good God. The biggest, the king,
Yeah, no kidding. The king of rock and roll, as they say.
And Tom and he were big friends, and they were for many years after, until Elvis died, of course. And when I knew him, he was a very humble, quiet guy who didn't drink alcohol, certainly never did any drugs, and neither did the Squires or Tom. I've never taken a drug in my life, and neither has Tom. It's just not in our culture when we were brought up. Plenty of booze, but no drugs.
So I guess we got to keep moving along here. We're running out of time, and there's so much to go over with you. But in between Tom Jones and Manfred Mann, you did a movie project with Olivia Newton-John. Oh, yeah. And I when you were talking about it, I heard you say that it was a terrible experience. And I guess I'm curious, what was so terrible about it? Was it the project itself, or was it her?
No, it wasn't a terrible experience. It was a terrible movie.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
The experience is great. We rehearsed a few times. We never did a gig. We did promotion, and that's what they wanted. They wanted a band to do promotion for the movie, but it was an awful movie.
What movie was it?
And it was Olivia Newton-John's first movie, and she was a sweet girl, and she was very talented. She could sing like she sung, and I did that for about a year, maybe 6 months, 9 months to a year, something like that. And they paid very well, as all movie productions do. Better than the music business does.
Yeah, no kidding.
And it was good. And I knew the keyboard player in it. Again, I had to audition with about 6 other people, and I got through. So I was pleased about that. Pleased to be working. At least I was playing drums at rehearsals, but no gigs.
Well, and then when you end up joining up with Earth Band, obviously "Blinded by the Light" ended up becoming a massive song, obviously done by Springsteen first, and then you guys do it, and it becomes this massive hit, and obviously it's still a staple of classic rock radio to this day. I used to work at a radio station. It was a country station, but right down the hall was a rock station, which I'd always listen to them, and I swear to God, they play that song like every 2 hours. It never goes away. But from what I understand, part of what you guys didn't know at the time if it was going to be such a smash hit. But I was kind of reading, and it sounds like part of what made it such a hit was the debate when the song came out over whether the lyric was deuce or douche. Did that really I guess confusion and debate, did that really, do you think, play into that song becoming so huge?
Yes, I'm certain it did. We spent hours moving the needle on the record. Younger people will not understand this, not even yourself. You got to move the arm of the record player onto the disc of the record, and then it plays at 78 RPM, folks. So, and if you want to get a lyric, because no lyrics were written on the sleeve, "Greetings from Asbury Park" was the album, and it disappeared. Nobody bought it. Manfred and I were given a copy of it by a journalist and said, "This guy's really good." And of course he was. And what a great writer Springsteen was and is, and what a great performer he was and is. still. So, I mean, you know, but I'm sure our version of Blinded by the Light helped him a lot
Well, I'm sure.
because I go to the States all the time. You know, my daughter lives in Seattle way. And, you know, I hear when I'm on when I listen to American radio, as you just said, it gets played. You'll hear it 4 times a day, at least, Blinded by the Light by Earth Band, even today. So, and I saw Max Weinberg, the E Street drummer. He came to see The Firm, the Jimmy Page, Paul Rodgers band. And I said, "Oh, Max, I better tell you, mate. I was the original drummer on Blinded by the Light." He said, "Oh man, that kept us going for a few years." You can imagine the royalties coming in, and Springsteen put it into the band, you know, into E Street Band, and kept it going for years. So until he became a huge superstar himself, of course, a few years after that.
Well, with the with the amount of songs that you've been a part of, like Blinded by the Light and Thunderstruck and almost half of Razor's Edge, really, and everything else, I mean, your music that you're performing on is probably, I would imagine, between all the radio stations here in the U.S. that still play classic rock, which is, I would argue there's probably more classic rock stations over here than, you know, new rock or anything like that. I mean, your songs are probably playing over here probably nonstop. I mean, you could probably tune to any radio station and there's a song featuring Chris Slade at all times, I would imagine, which has got to be an incredible feeling.
I never thought of that, but yeah, you're probably right. I'll have that feeling from now on because I've never thought of it before. Honestly, I have not. But yeah, why did you say half of Razor's Edge? Oh, because it was on the radio a lot.
Yeah, just because, I mean, you know, you always hear Thunderstruck and Money Talks and Are You Ready? And, you know, there's a number of songs. Unfortunately, my favorite song from that album, well, probably my favorite AC/DC song, period, you never hear it on the radio. I don't think the band plays it live. I was hoping that you would do a cover of it on this on Timescape, but you don't. And that's Fire Your Guns. I think that's probably my all-time favorite AC/DC song. I just love that song so much.
Oh yeah, you're not the only one. Actually, people come up and ask for it.
So
you know, the band even like it. You know, my band Timeline. They want to do it too. And it turned out great. And it's one of the very few we worked up in the studio, actually in the studio, without a demo record that Malcolm or Angus had done. And I was like, "Oh, here's the riff, you know, just play what you feel." So I did, and it was a really fast rocker.
Yeah.
And, you know, yes, I loved playing that. And the guys wanted to do it over and over and over again, as they do with a lot of tracks. And after about the third take, I said, "Hey, guys, this is really fast. So it's not going to change. I'm not going to do anything different. So why don't you just play to that backing track if it's good, if you consider it's good enough?" And I knew it was good enough. So I said, "That's the best take. Do that one, and just play along with that if you want anything different." And I'm sure, as usual, they use the first take anyway, because you find that with a lot of bands, don't you? You do 25 takes and you use the first one because it has the best feel to it. And it's fresh and it's, you know, it doesn't matter if you take 5 hours between takes. The first one is quite often the best.
Well, when you end up joining AC/DC, I think you beat out about 100 drummers or so that they had lined up to audition. You know, obviously at that point in your career, you had been a part of big projects. But, you know, acdc, especially in those days, I mean, just, you know, on another level. Was it, you know, a little bit nerve-wracking in a way to join up with this, you know, at the time band that was already a legendary, you know, rock act and filling, you know, arenas and stadiums?
I've never been nervous in my life. Wow. On stage. This was, you can be apprehensive, or I can be apprehensive a little bit, you know, but so if you're nervous about, you can, yeah, as I say, you can be apprehensive, but nervous, I've never felt that, I'm afraid. I feel sorry for people who get stage fright. And there's some brilliant people who are brilliant at what they do, singers, drummers, guitarists, and they all say, oh, I threw up before going or something. I've never had that. And I'm not an arrogant person. I'm just sure of my abilities, if you like. But Cliff told me afterwards that they dropped slightly. He said we used to sell 10 million records straight off in one country, and now we're just down to 1 million. You know, that soon went up though with Razor's Edge. The guys wrote amazing songs there, I think, as you just said. No pressure with the audition, but they told me afterwards, they didn't tell me, Dick, the drum tech, told me that they auditioned all over the world, Australia, America, and Britain. And people would come out to the woodwork and they'd say, they'd phone and say, because don't forget, no internet yet or any of that stuff. You know, don't tell my band, but I really want to try out with you guys. Because everybody wanted to be the drummer of acdc. So I was chuffed to death. You know, that no pressure in the audition. Angus and Malcolm sat 10 feet on 2 chairs with the guitars on their laps, as they usually do. And Cliff was over in that corner and Brian was over in that corner. And no pressure. And they went, okay, we'll do Back in Black. You count in. Oh, God. Here we go. So it's like tick, 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 dang, dang. You know,
yeah,
no pressure at all. And they were looking me right in the face because, you know, to see if I'd crumbled in any way. Because if you crumble at an audition, you're going to crumble on stage.
Yeah, for sure.
And when you get in front of 100,000 people, if you crumble, that's the band screwed, you know? So they had to put me under pressure, or everybody possibly who tried out. I'm not going to say who tried out, but they were top names. Very, very top names, and surprising. It would surprise you if I said who it was. And, you know, I was so pleased to get that job because to me it was a job and I had to do my job. Because I say you can't crumble, not with acdc.
What other songs did you audition with, or was it just Back in Black?
You know, I can't remember, but probably Highway to Hell. And I remember from Razor's Edge, they'd never been heard before. They wanted me to learn Rock Your Heart Out. Now, it'd never been performed except for this demo. And it was, to me, it was so different to anything else that acdc have ever done, because it's like a syncopated bass drum. And Angus and Malcolm used to play drums on the demos, but this is like a syncopated bass drum. And it was completely different to what you think of acdc, and it is. I love that song. and I want Timeline to cover it as well. We haven't covered it yet, but I'd like that to happen. I'd like to do it on stage because I think it's a great song, tremendous song. So that came out of the audition, and I had about 20, 30 minutes to learn it from never having heard it before, ever, to see how you'd be on that as well, like a bit of a test.
So what, they just play it for you, and then what, they just leave you alone for a little while and you work on it?
Yeah, they left me alone for half an hour. Wow. They went and had a cup of tea or whatever. And because that's all, Angus only drinks tea. He's never drank alcohol. People don't get that because he's a wild man on stage. They think he's a wild man off stage. He's not.
Everybody in that band just seems like the nicest guys ever, and very non-rock star, very like just kind of blue collar guys that play rock and roll, and they just happen to play in stadiums. Yep,
that's about it. You about summed it up. That's what they're like. Malcolm drank a lot. It's well documented. I'm not saying anything out of school. But he cleaned his act up. When I was in the band, he didn't drink at all. So he and Angus would come, and we also, the band, didn't drink out of respect for them. So occasionally, Brian, Cliff, and me would go off to a Japanese restaurant or something and get some sake and some beer now and again. But apart from that, we didn't drink. I didn't drink all the way through the Razor's Edge tour.
Wow.
Yeah, and people go, it's AC/DC. I go, yeah, and you got the wrong idea, man. How do you think they get so good at what they do? They don't fall around drunk, And certainly not on stage. So an AC/DC performance that you see, any performance for the last 50 years, they'd be completely sober.
That's incredible.
Which is not what comes across.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, Angus is, I don't know how old he is. He's probably in his 70s at this point or something. And I mean, he's still running around like crazy, and it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, I think he's 70. I'm not sure, but I think he is.
Wow.
And he runs everywhere. He don't stop when he's on stage. And what a great performer. What a great guitar,
100%. One of the best. And one last thing I want to ask you, because are just about out of time here, I know. But when you left AC/DC the first time, you didn't drum. You didn't pick up drumsticks, as you put it, for 3 years, and you went to art college and learned to draw. I guess so. Two things to that point. One was the art, the drawing, something that you had always wanted to pursue, and two, what made you decide to get back into drumming?
I can't remember the exact thing. I don't know. I honestly, I think I wanted to try out with somebody.
But when you got the call to join Asia, were you already back to drumming at that point?
Ah, right. No, that's what it was. I had played on a very semi-pro sort of basis. Excuse me. And believe it or not, Asia, this is the thing. They didn't know my email address or my phone number. They knew my address, my home address. I don't know how. And they wrote me a letter.
No kidding. Wow.
Yes, the old-fashioned way.
Yeah. Wow. That's insane.
Just unbelievable. And I got a letter through my letterbox that said, "We'd like you to play drums with Asia." Wow. And I was chuffed to death because, of course, the drummer before was Carl Palmer, who everybody considers is great, you know. So the Asia band then consisted of Jeff Downs, who was always there, keyboard player, and John Payne, bass player and singer. And yeah, they wrote me a letter.
That's incredible. My God. Wow.
Yeah.
That's probably, is that the only time you've ever gotten a letter in the mail to join a band?
Yep. Yeah, it's the only time I've ever got a letter.
even back in the 60s and 70s, you were at least getting phone calls.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Wow.
But they had no phone number. They had no other way to let me know that they wanted me to play drums.
Wow. Well, I guess one last thing that just popped up. I know you're working on a book, and I think, as you put it, you've been working on it for 19 years now. But
90,
yeah.
90.
Oh, 90 years. Yeah. When is there any further progress on that, or when do you expect that to be released?
I keep saying next year, but I was going to save it for when I'm older. But it's written. It just isn't collated properly yet. So I've broken the back of it. I've written most of the things. I've just got to put it together now. So it'll probably be a year from now at least, if I live.
Well, I'm sure you will. I mean, they say, I mean, look at...
If I don't, my missus will finish it off for me. With some home truths.
Well, Chris, I really appreciate you taking the time, man. It was so great to talk to you. Make sure you check out Timescape. It's out now. And I guess if you're in Europe, you can look for tour dates for the Chris Slade Timeline. If you're here in the U.S., I guess we'll have to wait a little longer. There's the record right there. Timescape. It's been out for about 3 weeks now. It's a great record. It's available on all the streaming platforms. Chris, thanks so much for taking the time, man. And
okay, it's also available on chrisslade.com.
chrisslade.com. Are your tour dates on chrisslade.com too?
Tour dates and everything else, and the record for sale is the album for sale is on the Chris Slade Timeline on Facebook.
Chris Slade Timeline on Facebook for dates. Chris, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it. So much that we didn't get to. I wanted to talk about the firm and so many other things, but maybe when you put the book out, you can come back on and we can go over.
Let's do it again.
Go over everything else that we missed. So thanks again. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, Logan. It's great, mate. Thank you very much for your time.